Hey guys, tonight we begin with the grim dangerous and not so glamorous world of medieval assassins, those shadowy figures who crept through castle halls and darkened alleys to change history with a blade and a whisper. While Hollywood makes them look cool, the truth is being a medieval assassin seriously sucked. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're retuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's be clear, nobody in medieval times rolled out of bed thinking, you know what? I'd love to stab a nobleman in the throat for 12 silver coins and spend the next 3 days hiding in a barrel. Becoming an assassin wasn't a dream job. It was the last stop on the My Life Completely Derailed Express. Most assassins weren't mysterious monks trained on mountaintops. They were desperate peasants, disgraced soldiers, or ex-thieves with steady hands. Some were so far off the grid they didn't even show up in the census. If you had land, a title, or even a goat, you didn't do the stabbing. You hired someone to do it. But if you just escaped debtor's prison, had a reputation for solving problems, and could sneak into a tavern without being noticed, congrats. Someone was about to slide a coin purse your way and whisper a name, and it was never Bob, the quiet turnip farmer. No, it was always a corrupt baron, a bloated bishop, or someone with bodyguards, a moat, and a bad attitude. The pay? Tempting. The job? Horrifying. But by the time someone considered it, they had nothing left. No family, no future, and definitely no dental plan. And let's not forget the perks or lack thereof. No retirement, no recognition, no evenings off. You couldn't exactly open a shop with a sign that read, "Quiet eliminations by appointment." You stayed quiet, moved fast, and never told a soul what you actually did. Especially not loudly over drinks at the local inn. "Oh yeah, I sell carpets. The stains?" Dye. Nobody set out to be an assassin. They were made by poverty, desperation, and a world that chewed people up and spat them out wearing a hood and gripping a rusty blade. You weren't a hero. You weren't even a villain. You were the nervous footnote history tried to forget. So let us bust a myth. Medieval assassins didn't train under candlelight in some hidden monastery with mentors and flute music in the background. There was no dramatic montage, no patient teacher, no pep talk before your first kill. You learned by not dying and barely. Training? Ha! If you had military experience, great, you knew how to hold a knife. If not, well, stabbing is pretty self-explanatory. Escaping afterward without losing a kidney? That took either skill or luck, mostly luck. No manuals, no guild meetings, no safety briefings. You didn't learn how to spot a body double or find a noble-less escape hatch. You learned by dangling from windowsills, hoping you didn't just sneak into the servants' quarters again. Poison? Trial and error, emphasis on error. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes your target just felt dizzy and eyed his soup funny. Sometimes you drank the wrong cup. There was no medieval poison control. Just guesswork, herbs, and a strong stomach. If you were exceptionally lucky, maybe a veteran assassin gave you a tip or two, like how not to squeak on cobblestones. But mentoring was rare and usually brief, because assassins didn't retire. They vanished. Weapon training? Forget it. You didn't carry a broadsword. You had a dagger stolen off a guard. Maybe a garrote if you were feeling fancy, and anything else that fit under your cloak without making noise. You weren't some elite martial artist. You were a tired man with calloused hands, quiet steps, and a dangerous relationship with alleyways. You succeeded not by training, but by surviving. You learned by killing fast, messy, and disappearing before someone could sketch your face and pin it to a church door. Your education? Brutal, practical, and with no graduation. Just bruises, bloodstains, and the creeping sense that you are utterly alone. Why take the job at all? One reason. Coin. Cold, jangling, deliciously spendable coin. That's what lured you in. But the reality? You got paid in lies. No one hiring an assassin wants a long-term arrangement. They want a one-time deal with no paperwork and ideally no witnesses, including you. They offer silver half now, half later. But later means if you don't mess up, make us look bad, leave a trail, or survive long enough to talk. So you do the job. Slip through shadows. Maybe kill a baron in his sleep. Not poetic, not noble. And when you come back? About that payment. Either the clients fled, or they try to kill you. A knife in your gut is cheaper than a bonus. And even if you do get paid, it's never enough, not for the danger, not for the blood, not for the 3 days spent hiding in a flea-ridden haystack with moral regret. You get a pouch of coins, a grunt of acknowledgement, and affirm you are never here. Oh, and some contracts? They were traps, setups. You'd be sent after a decoy with guards lying in wait. Surprise! You just walked into a sting with your name already on the gallows. Even when the job was legit, you had no recourse. Couldn't exactly go to court. Your Honor, I'd like to sue Lord Edmund for assassin fraud. No, the only court you'd see was the one preparing your noose. So you learned fast demand payment up front and trust absolutely no one. Especially not the sweaty scribe promising this job would change your life. It would, mostly by ending it. Being an assassin meant living on broken promises and vanishing before they broke you. So now you've taken the job. Been lied to. Probably going to die. Let's talk gear. Forget the fantasy novels. No wrist blades, no smoke bombs, no folding crossbows tucked into your boots. Your tools were whatever you could steal, sharpen, or stuff under a ragged cloak without clanking. If you were lucky, and I mean found a gold coin in a dead man's shoe, lucky you had a decent dagger, not curved like a dragon's tooth. Just sharp, hopefully not rusted, and ideally not still sticky from your last job. Poison existed, sure, but it was far from glamorous. Usually made from herbs, minerals, or toad guts. Some killed fast, some took days. Some just made your victim vomit and swear off stew. Ropes, occasionally useful for strangling, climbing, or tying something down. But if you didn't know your knots, things got awkward quick. Nothing ruins an assassination like fumbling with a bowline and muttering, "Wait, this goes over or under?" Bows were nice. If you had one, knew how to shoot it, and could sneak it into a castle disguised as flower decor. But most kills? Up close, personal, and hopefully not too slippery. Backups? No. If your dagger snapped, got lost, or fell into a well-improvise. Slate roof tile? Rusty nail? Shoe buckle with rage? Worth a try. You carried your tools in hems, boots, or hollowed out bread if needed. And you kept them close, not for safety, but because in your line of work, your weapon was your best friend, your employer, and your only protection. In this line of work, your weapon wasn't just a tool. It was your best friend, your boss, and your retirement plan. There were no upgrades, no tinkering between missions. You didn't polish your kit. You just prayed it wouldn't fail mid-strike. Because in the end, the weapon didn't make the kill. You did, alone, poorly equipped and expected to perform miracles with a spoon and a whisper. And your targets? They weren't local drunks or unlucky travelers. No one paid you to take out Jeff, the sleepy candlemaker. Assassins were hired for the important ones, nobles, bishops, officers, even royalty. And those people were inconveniently difficult to kill. First, the guards, not 1 or 2 dozens. Armed, armored, and annoyingly alert. Some guarded the gates. Some paced the halls. Some just stood there staring at nothing, daring you to blink. You'd spend days learning which stair creaked, how long a torch lasted, and where the asthmatic guard took his wheezing breaks. Then there were the walls. Castles didn't come with back doors. They had gates, murder holes, arrow slits, and moats filled with either water or teeth. And if you managed to avoid drowning, you still had to worry about hot oil. Yes, boiling oil. Because apparently your job included may get flambéed for peeking. Next came the servants, the cooks, scribes, stable hands. One suspicious glance, and they'd be whispering to the captain of the guard before you could mutter, "I'm just the herbalist." Assassins weren't just dodging swords, they were dodging gossip. And in medieval times, gossip could travel faster than arrows. And finally, your actual target, paranoid for good reason. Surrounded by rivals, heirs, schemers, and dozens of false friends, they didn't eat without a tester, didn't sleep without triple-locked doors. Some even rotated bedrooms at night like a game of musical chairs with deadly consequences. Even feasts weren't your golden opportunity. Yes, they drank, but so did you. And you still had to get past the guards, the dogs, a suspiciously awake jester, and 50 people waving tankards in the air. Just getting close could take weeks. You might pose as a servant, bribe a maid, or hide in a barrel with a rat for company. And when the time came, one shot, one perfect, quiet, vanish into smoke moment. Because if you missed, your new home was a gibbet cage with a sign that read, "Nice try." Now, when you imagine a medieval assassin, you probably picture sleek robes, leather straps, a hood that billows dramatically. In reality, you looked like a goat herder with secrets. Disguises weren't stylish. They were whatever rags you could steal. A monk's robe 3 sizes too big, or maybe a guard's uniform that still smelled like its last owner. Blending in meant looking as filthy, limping, and sunburned as everyone else. You didn't to look suspicious. Because of your cloak you looked suspicious. Because you kept fidgeting with your belt to hide a cheesecloth-wrapped dagger. And masks? Not a thing. The only face coverings available made you look like you had leprosy. Great for keeping people away. Terrible for parties. If someone asked who you were, you'd have to improvise. "I'm Brother Tobias. I specialize in silent prayer and rooftop maintenance." Even if the disguise worked, noble households were sharp. Servants noticed new faces, especially ones who didn't know the cook's name or how to carry a chamber pot without dropping it. You are always one. Who are you again? Away from being clubbed with the nearest candlestick. But let's say your disguise held. Congratulations. Now you had to keep up the act while ignoring all the very stab-worthy people walking by. And wigs? Not a thing. If you needed to look older or younger, you smeared dirt on your face and hoped your honey-glued beard held. Your disguise didn't protect you. It gave you maybe 5 minutes of confusion. After that, you either disappeared or got very convincing very fast. Because no one wanted to be the assassin found in the bishop's laundry room wearing a nun's habit and holding a sword. Especially not on a feast day. There was no team, no sidekick with a crossbow, no clever alchemist whispering advice from the shadows, no guild handler handing you scrolls with warm encouragement. You had a rusty knife, and trust issues that could fill a moat. Yes, people talked about assassin brotherhoods, but those were just stories tavern gossip fueled by mead and boredom. You were more likely to meet a ghost than another contract killer who wanted to network. Why so isolated? Because in this line of work, the fewer people who knew you existed, the longer you lived. Every contact was a risk. Every friendly chat was a potential betrayal. Even your client might not know your real name. And if they did, you already had your exit plan. Companionship? Laughable. Friends asked questions. Lovers noticed bruises, blood, and the fact that you always slept with a blade. You couldn't settle down. One mistake, one person recognizing your face, and your whole life turned into a sprint toward the nearest sewer drain. Even criminals avoided you. Thieves and smugglers had friends. You were the kind of person who made friends disappear. People feared you, or worse, saw you as a walking liability. No one wanted to eat stew with the guy who might attract a lynch mob by dessert. And don't expect sympathy. You couldn't explain that strangling a corrupt bishop gave you nightmares. If you talked, people assumed you were lying or dangerous. And they weren't wrong. So you kept everything to yourself. Your secrets, your scars, your knives. At inns, you sat in the darkest corner, back to the wall, eyes always watching the door. You never drank too much, never stayed more than a night, never gave a real name unless someone paid for it, and even then, it wasn't yours. Being an assassin meant learning how to vanish, not just into crowds, but from every life you never got to live. Let's say the plan worked. You bribed the right person. You found the right disguise. You even got yourself into the perfect spot. But then, you froze. Maybe the target turned around too fast. Maybe they were holding their child. Maybe your hands just shook at the wrong moment. And in that second, you were already dead. Because failure wasn't a slap on the wrist. It was public. It was painful. And it was extremely creative. Death by ropes, fire, spikes, wheels, or some metal contraption with a name like the Bone Cracker's Delight. If you missed the kill, the entire mission collapsed. Your target lived. And the moment they did, they made sure the whole world knew someone had just tried to end them. Suddenly, you weren't a ghost. You were a wanted man. A face on a poster. A name whispered by guards who now had a reason to care. Sometimes, your worst enemy wasn't even the target. It was your employer. If you failed, you became a liability. Someone who might be captured, tortured, and worse. Talk, and the first person to send someone after you would be the one who hired you in the first place. There were no do-overs, no apologies. No, my blade slipped. I'll try again tomorrow. You had one chance, one moment, one heartbeat. And if you blew it, the best outcome was a quick death before anyone could ask questions. Failure didn't just bring death. It brought shame, the quiet, creeping kind. You didn't just fail to kill. You failed to disappear. You failed to be perfect. And for assassins, perfection was the only path to survival. Anything less painted a target on your back. No one cared if you succeeded 12 times before. You were only as good as your last kill. And if your last kill didn't happen, you'd better start running. But let's say you did it. The plan worked. The dagger found its mark. No screams, no witnesses. Just one clean, quiet fall to the floor. And just like that, a very important person was no longer breathing. Congratulations. Now, run. Because being a successful assassin in the Middle Ages didn't mean sipping wine on a rooftop while the city burned behind you. It meant sprinting through dark alleys with blood on your boots and a guard dog catching your scent. There was no victory lap, no quiet drink with friends, no debrief over tea. The second your blade struck, your new job became escaping absolutely everyone who now wanted you dead. Guards would be mobilizing. Gates locked, horses, probably tied up 3 streets away. You, bleeding, dizzy, praying your exit route didn't involve swimming. You had to plan your escape before the job routes, disguises, fallback safe houses. Maybe a friendly boatman who owed you a favor, or at least didn't ask too many questions. Because once word got out, the entire city would shut down. Scandal meant lockdown, closed gates, armed patrols, and a dozen angry men with fresh sketches of your face and a warning that read, "Extremely stabby. Approach with swords drawn." And your client? Assuming they ever meant to pay you, they were long gone. You wouldn't find them waiting at a tavern with a warm smile and a thank you note. No, They disappeared just as fast. Because the moment you completed the job, you became the biggest threat in the room. You knew too much. You'd proven you could get into places people weren't supposed to go. Even success painted a target on your back. And what did you get in return? A handful of coins, a week of sleeping in hayloss, bribing ferry captains, shaving in the dark and pretending your name was Brother Lucian, while trailing behind a group of monks headed east. Success didn't mean safety. It just meant starting over. New city, new name, new list of people trying to kill you. Yes, you pulled it off. The kill was clean. But now you run. And if being hunted across the countryside wasn't bad enough, there was another problem. Everyone around you was terrified, not of you as a person, but of what you might be. In the medieval imagination, an assassin wasn't just a killer in a cloak. They were cursed, unholy, whisperers to demons. Someone who smeared frog guts on blades and vanished under full moons. You weren't feared like a soldier. You were feared like a ghost story. Some said you could shapeshift. Others claimed you were invisible unless doused in holy water. A few whispered that assassins could kill with a breath through stone walls. You'd walk past a village and hear someone mutter, "Don't look at him. He might hex the baby." Even your tools made people nervous. A dagger? Obviously forged by witches. Poison? That wasn't herbs and minerals. It was sorcery, probably stirred with a severed toe during an eclipse. You might think that kind of fear would help you, but no. Superstition made people dangerous. It turned crowds into mobs. And mobs didn't wait for explanations. They lit torches, threw rocks, and shouted things like, "Burn him before he calls down lightning." You could be blamed for anything. A death, a disease, a cow that tripped. Someone would whisper, "Maybe it was the Shadow Man." And just like that, you were being chased out of town again. So you kept moving. Always, never too long in one place. One curious priest, one angry farmer, and you'd find yourself tied to a post next to someone yelling about the moon. And heaven help you if you were caught with anything weird dried herbs, a foreign accent, or strange coins. That was enough to get you accused of sorcery and marched to the nearest bonfire. Because in a world where monsters wore human faces, being clever, quiet, or quick made you terrifying. And terrifying people didn't live long. Now, let's talk about poison, the so-called elegant tool of the assassin. No screaming, no blood, just a sip, a stagger, a sigh. Quiet, clean, professional, in theory. In reality, poisoning someone in the Middle Ages was like trying to win a sword fight with a tea bag and a vague idea of botany. You didn't have lab-grade poison. You had mushrooms, plants, minerals, maybe a toad if you were lucky. You'd mash them up, whisper a prayer, and hope. Even when you got the mix right, the dose was a guess. A pinch too little, and the noble just vomits and cancels the feast. A pinch too much, and you keel over before the soup's served. And that's assuming you could even reach the food. Medieval kitchens were chaos. You couldn't just stroll in and sprinkle death. You had to bribe the cook, sneak past the tasters, or find a way to poison a dish that would pass through 3 people and a dog before the noble ever touched it. Yes, a dog. Because nobles didn't just eat. They conducted military-grade food security. And if, somehow, the poison slipped through, it still might not work. Some took hours, others took days. 1 minute your mark is laughing over venison. The next, he's doubled over and demanding an exorcist. And if he survived, he wasn't blaming the chef or the taster. He was blaming you, the twitchy man with the herbal pouch and guilty eyes. Getting caught didn't mean prison. It meant pain, tools, interrogation. You'd confess to poisoning the Duke, the dinner, the entire pantry, and probably the dog. But maybe, just maybe, you succeeded. You removed a tyrant, undermined a royal bloodline, silenced a political threat. Think that would earn you respect? Nope, because assassins weren't remembered. They weren't thanked. They weren't honored. At best, you were a rumor, a hooded shape, a whisper, the quiet man in the corner who never finished his ale. Your name wouldn't be carved into any monument. Your story wouldn't be told around fires. Your client didn't want to remember you. They wanted deniability. The less they knew, the safer they were. So your name? It vanished the moment the job was done. If you were foolish enough to use a real one, it was already on someone's hit list. If anyone remembered it, it was only so they could curse it. You weren't a hero. You weren't even a villain. You were the footnote. If a noble wanted a statue, they commissioned one for themselves. You got a wooden box, an unmarked grave. Or if things went badly, a spike with your name on it and the word traitor carved underneath. And sometimes your name was only remembered so others could be warned. Don't cross the king. Remember what happened to Lord Ulrich. Yes, and the man who did it? Gone, like a ghost. That was your legacy. Not fame, not glory, just absence. Because in the medieval world, heroes were remembered. Assassins were erased. So let's say you survived. You got the job done. You even got paid. A miracle by all accounts. Now all you had to do was disappear. Keep quiet. Trust your client to protect your identity. Wrong. Because if there's one rule more important than don't get caught, it's don't trust anyone, especially the one paying you. Your client, a noble, a merchant, or a bishop with blood on his hands, wasn't interested in your well-being. He wanted results. Clean, silent results. And the moment you delivered, you became the loose end.